Hello, and welcome again to a Beatles program, a weekly talk show podcast that we call Things We Said Today. This is a program in which we talk about anything and everything that has to do with the Fab Four. It could be about their past, the present, and sometimes even the future. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm one of the three regular co-hosts of this show. And you might be familiar with another program that I host, a syndicated Beatles show called Every Little Thing. I'm being joined by my two other co-hosts. First of all, we have our resident musicologist who for many years and still is writing for Beatle Fan Magazine, used to write for the New York Times in their classical department, and is a freelance writer right now. He's the author of Got That Something, How the Beatles Changed Everything, and From the Cavern to the Rooftop. And that's our very own Alan Kozin. Hi, Alan.
Hey, Ken. How are you doing? And hello, everyone.
And also we have Steve Marinucci, who writes for Billboard, Access.com, Variety, whole bunch of publications. And he's also the author of Meet a Monkey, Davy Jones. Say hello, Steve.
Hey, hello, Ken. Hello, everyone. Oh, well.
It's
anyway.
hello, actually.
Hello. Okay, well, hello. There's an old song by that, hello. But that's beside the...
That's
Sup with Camel.
Right. I love that song, actually. But anyway.
Also
okay.
The Partridge Family, if you want to get into that. But anyway, our main topic on the show today is going to be soundtrack music written by Paul McCartney, specifically for films, songs that he was commissioned to write. And we're going to talk about that in a few moments. But first, we'll start with the latest in Beatle news. And I know, Steve, you got some information about the Beatles being nominated for some Emmy Awards.
Yes. And if I can find where I put my sheet. The Beatles were nominated for 5 Emmy Awards for 8 days a week, which is really kind of cool. They were nominated for Outstanding Documentary or Nonfiction Special, Outstanding Picture Editing for a Nonfiction Program, Outstanding Writing for a Nonfiction Program, Outstanding Picture Editing for a Nonfiction Program, and Outstanding Sound Editing for a Nonfiction Program. Wait a minute, what did I do there? And Outstanding Sound Mixing for a Nonfiction Program, single or multi-camera. So they were nominated for. They got 5 nominations there. So yay.
Yeah. I kind of have some objections to that. I mean,
why?
They are being nominated for Best Picture and Sound Editing for a film in which they replaced actual performances with performances that are not the performances being seen on screen. So I don't know that should be rewarded, really. At the Manchester footage, and you're hearing Hollywood Bowl footage, when the Manchester footage is perfectly fine, or soundtrack, So that's just my objection to that. Otherwise, I'm happy for the Beatles to win awards. It's just that, if the title of the category is nonfiction, I think they should take that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just saying.
No, and I mean that was one of the points that we argued, very heavily when we were talking about the film. Mm-hmm. That was one of the big. In fact, I remember you especially were really all over that, and I think Al was too. But yeah, I mean that was one of the points that people got upset over, is that that the sound wasn't authentic in all the throughout the movie. But in any event.
Okay. And the award show, we should say, will be televised September 17th on CBS.
By the great Stephen Colbert. Somebody asked me, by the way, how they were getting nominated for an Emmy, and my guess is because it was on Hulu.
Right.
So that's what I'm figuring.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so, I want more awards. More awards won for the Beatles.
Right.
The more, the merrier.
Yep.
Okay. Other news?
Other news is that they've already started ratcheting up the promotion for Yellow Submarine for the 50th anniversary next year. They announced a new graphic novel by Bill Morrison, drawn by Bill Morrison. The information I got didn't say a whole lot about him, but I looked him up, and He has done extensive work for The Simpsons. He has done extensive work for Disney. That's where he started.
Mad
And
Magazine.
he's now the executive editor of Mad because it's moving from the East Coast to Burbank. So he's got quite a bit of experience. I'm not a comic book fan. My son is, and I know he would probably know who he is. And I'm sure comic book fans know because of his Simpsons connection. They know him. So that's going to be kind of cool. Given that, that kind of brings up the old, the former 3D, the 3D version that they were going to do in the theater. And I wonder how, at that point, especially since it's 50th anniversary now, how if the objection to that would still be as stringent as it was, because they didn't time that very well. I mean, there was no anniversary. They just announced it, and people didn't go for it. And I'm wondering now that if they brought that idea back, whether they would do it again. I don't know.
Well, remember, we've talked about, at least we've thought that the Beatles never cared about anniversaries at all. They hardly ever addressed it because it pretty much emphasizes the fact that something is old. And and now with what happened with Sgt. Pepper, acknowledging that, now we're thinking they're going to be doing more, like with the White Album and whatever. We're already thinking ahead. So maybe if Apple is behind this, then they're saying that it's okay. The anniversary aspect.
The Beatles have come to embrace social media. You've seen that. You see they tweet out stuff every day. Paul does, Ringo does, John and George, John, the Lennon and Harrison estates, not so much, but Ringo and Paul have really taken to it, and so have the Beatles. And I think that social media, especially younger people, because younger people are really so much a part of it, I think they would probably take it a little better now than they did or when this thing originally happened. I'm not saying, they probably would have to find somebody new to do it, but it probably would go over better depending on who they picked. So,
hey, I have something they should do.
What?
I had a glimpse of something like 4 hours of outtakes of Magical Mystery Tour. Now, this may seem like torture to you, but I'm telling you, there is a whole lot of interesting stuff that they did not put in that film. And I think, Paul is always talking about how, this film's time will come and people will eventually catch up with it. I think he ought to get this footage and go back into an editing suite and reconsider the edit and make a new Magical Mystery Tour, because there is some really interesting stuff, some really funny stuff. And I think that people would look at the film different. I mean, it would still be weird, no question about it. But, just for instance, there is a big dinner scene where everybody, a lot of the actors in the cast were, actual actors and were kind of eccentric people, who the Beatles just liked, like Ivor Cutler and, various British musical types. And and at this dinner, a lot of them get up and do their thing. One guy gets up and sings a Gershwin song, and, Aunt Jessie gets up and plays the drums, and she's really good.
Wasn't that in the outtakes in the DVD? Maybe
there was a clip of it.
I seem to remember that the Aunt Jessie thing.
Yeah,
that she was a good drummer.
There is. Did they include the? I think they might have included a little of it, but not the whole thing of Ivor Cutler singing his song in the middle of the fields with an organ. There was the.
Yeah, I think they did have little clips of all of that stuff.
Yeah, they had some. They had glimpses, but
right.
there is a lot of interesting, like, scenes that they set up where people would do interesting, weird things and just didn't get in the film, and I kind of don't understand it. Also, by the way, the footage I saw has the sort of uncensored version of Jan Carson the stripper. So,
Aha!
Yeah.
Just for that alone, it'll sell.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
So there you go.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know-
50th
I don't know about
anniversary of that's
4,
coming up, and nobody's talking about doing anything about it. So,
Well, they
Usually
just did.
because
They just
Magical
did
Mystery Tour gets such a bad reputation.
and it was
That,
out just a few years ago.
Right, and they had a chance. They had a chance to do something, and again, they didn't time it to an anniversary, but they had a chance to do something really good with it. If with all this extra footage, and they didn't. They really didn't do that much with it, and maybe they will go into it. And I mean, as I said, as we argued when the DVD came out, I didn't think the new DVD did that much for it, but if they did a reworking of it, well, maybe that would work.
The outtakes do have way too much of Magic Alex, but hey, that's me.
Well,
Given the people who are in this film, it lent itself to a lot of improv.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know if the public's ready for 4 hours of it. Alan.
No, I don't think 4 hours. But the thing is that in the 4 hours, there's a lot of really interesting stuff that they could reconsider including in a sort of a director's cut or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be a nice idea. Apple, if you're listening, and we hope you are.
And I have a piece of news here about Danny Harrison, because we've been hearing that he's about to do a couple of solo shows, and he's been working on a new album. Well, the new album has been announced. It's called In Parallel, and there's 3 slashes after the in. I don't know what that's about, but it's coming out October the 6th. And there is a video that's about a minute long that I posted on my Facebook page. You might want to check that out, which has got one of the songs in there. Not sure if it's the title track or not. So, but it is coming out October the 6th.
Okay.
Steve?
My final thing is just a small mention that I went through the set lists of the McCartney's shows on the 13th and the 15th, and again there were no big changes. He did bring back Junior's Farm on the 15th. Ken, you're not cheering.
I'm happy about it. I noticed when he returned to Miami, the first 2 shows, if you look at the set list, the changes between the first 2 shows were mainly the second and fourth song. Because in the first show, the second song was Save Us, the fourth song was Letting Go.
Right.
And I'm glad he's still doing Letting Go. I love Letting Go live. And then the second show, the second song was Junior's Farm, and the fourth song was Jet. So
right.
that's how he's alternating between the second and fourth songs, if he does alternate at all.
Right.
So,
and he also brought back. Well, he had Birthday in that first show, and I saw her standing there in the in the show after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he's not making any huge changes. I mean, we've all known that for a while. So
yeah, well, it could stay this way, or he might make some changes when he has some gaps in time there. Certainly before the Northeast dates in September. So
right.
We'll see, especially if his new album is anywhere. If it's coming out, which we haven't heard anything about, but if it does come out, he's going to do something from that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know some people that will be at the Los Angeles show. Unfortunately, I will not be, but that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, our main topic on our show this time out is soundtrack music written by Paul for films, specifically for Paul's solo career. So we're not talking about the Beatles films in this case. And just to be specific, we want this to be songs that he was commissioned to write or that he wrote and gave for a film, as opposed to songs from his catalog that were offered for a film. Because there are lots of examples of those. If you go back to, recently, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 had the song New in there. Mm-hmm. And obviously it wasn't written for the movie. Jerry Maguire has a couple of songs from the first McCartney album. 2 of the instrumentals from that album are on the Jerry Maguire soundtrack. So we're not talking about those songs at all. We're talking about songs that he wrote specifically for the films he was asked to write and he gave for a specific film. So we're going to start with a movie that came out in 1967 called The Family Way, which Paul did the music on his own. And would you like to comment on that first, Alan?
Yeah, sure. Actually, that was that period before Sgt. Pepper when everybody was off doing their own thing, and Paul had been commissioned to do this. He got together with George Martin to talk about what to do, and basically came up with roughly 15 seconds of music, which he and George Martin then fleshed out into the, Love in the Open Air theme. And then George Martin fleshed out further to be basically the whole soundtrack album. Paul's involvement with it was pretty minimal. But, it's kind of interesting that if you're going to come up with only 15 seconds of music, that it's really a memorable theme. It's very pretty. It's very attractive. It's got all the McCartney hallmarks. Obviously, it's instrumental. And at the recording sessions, which George Martin conducted, interestingly enough, the principal violinist in the orchestra was a young guy at the time named Neville Marriner. Neville Marriner went on to form a group called the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, made hundreds and hundreds of records, of classical music, as the leader of that, and then as the conductor, because he first led it from the violin, and then he ended up sort of doing freelance conducting towards the end of his life, well, maybe a decade or two before the end of his life. But, it's funny because there are session shots, and you can see him in there. And so for this book that I'm doing with Adrian Sinclair and Chip Mattinger, we sort of wrote to Neville Marriner when he was still alive. He just died a year or two ago, and asked if he had any memories of it. And, his memories of the sessions were, generally very positive. He didn't have a lot specific to say, but he definitely remembered having been there, work with Paul, because Paul was at the session, and George Martin as well. So that's about all I have to say about that.
Interesting that was really the early part of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a young guy at the time, 1967, 66. So, yeah.
Steve, anything to say about The Family Way?
Well, it was such an early solo thing. It was, just them as getting one of the first Beatles solo projects, and it's there isn't a whole lot to say about it because it's so, like Alan says, there's only a few seconds of the theme, but the fact that it was it was so much a part of that, it was used for that film, and I'm having trouble mouthing anything because there really isn't a whole lot to say. There isn't a whole lot of music there. The big thing is that it was such a significant point in the Beatles because it was one of the first times that the Beatles had struck out and done solo. So I guess that's probably the thing that needs to be really mentioned. And also the fact that the film itself was interesting because it starred Haley Mills, and Haley Mills up to this point had been, considered a child actor as a little girl, and in here, she became an adult, and that was kind of a big development for her too. So,
yeah. Do you guys remember? Because you're a few years older than me. If a big deal was made. Was a big deal made about this film and the fact that Paul wrote the music?
Not really.
Not that Paul wrote the music, that Haley Mills, was married. I think that was the bigger deal. Really?
Yeah, not that much was made. I mean, there were a bunch of small articles in the British press, particularly in the U.S. I mean, we sort of knew about it, but it not much was made of it. Don't remember ever hearing it on the radio. By the way, in those articles in the British press, there was talk early on of John collaborating with Paul, and in fact, John mentioned it in an interview that he did while he was doing How I Won the War. There's this talk of, Paul and I doing a soundtrack for, and then in the end, I don't know whether John just wasn't interested or Paul just wanted to get it done with, but Paul ended up doing it on his own. John didn't seem to care much either way,
Yeah. So you don't recall them ever using Paul as a way of selling the film?
Don't think so.
No.
Really.
No, I mean, the film didn't really have much significance or didn't get a whole lot of play here. I think it got a lot more play in England than it did here, but it really didn't get a whole lot of play here. I don't remember hearing the theme song on the AM stations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really kind of I wouldn't say disappeared, but it really was under the surface pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
I kind of feel the same way that you guys feel about it. It's a real pretty melody. It's just amazing how many variations you can make on the same melody and stretch it out for a full album. I do recall, and I have a single of George Martin. He made a single that he released with that melody on it too.
Yeah. Yeah, George Martin recorded it twice, actually. Once on the soundtrack album, and then he made a single, at the same time, basically, under a different name, like the New Tudor Minstrels or something like that. One was the George Martin Orchestra, one was the New Tudor Minstrels, and released the single separately, not on the sound. It's a different recording of it than the one on the soundtrack album. And then, of course, in 1995, as you know, there was that version that came out by a guy named Carl Aubert, I think a Canadian musician, who did his own variations on the theme from A Family Way, and Paul seems to have endorsed it. I think he might have written something in the liner note booklet or something, but so it had a little bit of life after the film.
I'm looking here at the Beatles Bible, which has an article about the album, and it has the quote from New Musical Express, and it says the original title for the film was called All in Good Time,
right? Which
is kind of interesting. And then they changed it to Wedlocked, and then it says the alternative working title of Wedlocked has now been dropped. Producers having settled on All in Good Time. But then they obviously changed it again. So there we go.
And we should also point out the name of the piece that Paul wrote was called Love in the Open Air.
Love in the Open Air, right.
The Family Way. Okay, so let's move on to a song that was a huge hit for Badfinger that Paul wrote, and that's Come and Get It for the Magic Christian. And really, I think it's a pretty significant song because not only was it a big hit, but it was so appropriate for the film because it really... You listen to the lyrics, and it's all about money, and that's what the film was all about. That people will do anything at any cost for money, and it was very suitable. So it worked on more than one level. It wasn't just a hit; it really fit the narrative of that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that film. That's a wonderful film. Apparently, Paul or Badfinger wanted to do the song differently, and Paul said, no, do it like the demo that we've all heard, and because he knew it would be a hit, and he was correct. So,
yeah, a few years back, he did the song live on tour, so I think that was in Europe only. I don't think he did it here.
That'd be a fun song to drag out and play, I mean, that if we've been talking about songs from the set list, that'd be a great song to play.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Everybody knows it. Well, those that grew up with the song know it, but yeah, that'd be a fun song to do live and bring back. All right. Any comments about Come and Get It, Alan?
Not really. I hadn't really thought of it as having been written for the film, but I guess maybe, do you know that it was? I forgot about it totally, actually.
Well, you always hear it was written for Badfinger, but it was going to be used in the film. So it just seems like, if you know the storyline,
it's perfect,
it really
for the
fits.
Film. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. All right, so then there's this other song you might have heard of. It's called Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
If you've seen Paul in concert, there's a slight chance he might pull this one out of the hat.
And if you were sleeping during it, you definitely would wake up.
Yeah, that's for sure.
He's always there's always, in all the documentaries about his touring, there's always the guys coming in, the safety inspectors coming in to see that the pyro is okay for that song,
Mm-hmm.
It's very explosive.
And it's funny that, if you see him indoors versus outdoors, how the pyro is different. The outdoors they do a lot more. I remember at Candlestick, and can you remember this? I mean, do you remember how explosive that was at Candlestick?
It was pretty loud.
It was very loud, and it was very explosive. I mean, the fireworks went way up into the sky, whereas when I saw him in Fresno last year, obviously it's indoors. They had to, it had to be toned down a little bit. So, but
do you guys know that was almost his second Bond song?
No. Tell us, Alan.
Well, someone had talked to him. I think it might have been Ron Cass, who after Apple got involved with the Bond guys, and also to Tony Bramwell. He was talked to about doing a song for Diamonds Are Forever. And according to Bramwell, he did the song and turned it in. And it's just that he was late, so they didn't use it. Now, I don't know how credible that story is. We've never seen any evidence of such a song. I mean,
right.
Even though there are gazillions and gazillions of Paul McCartney outtakes on the bootleg market, it doesn't mean we've heard them all.
That's true.
And we've never heard anything like that. But Bramwell said so, and I think it's come up a couple of times that the first time he was asked to do if he was interested in a Bond thing was Diamonds Are Forever, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason.
And then there's the story of that George Martin has told that after they recorded the version of Live and Let Die, the producers for the film heard it and said, "That's great. Who are we going to get to do it?"
And that story is absolutely, totally false.
But George Martin said it.
Yeah, George Martin said that he didn't know Ringo was coming, and that's why he got Andy White.
How do you know it's false?
Well, in the course of researching this book, we, and I should say really particularly Adrian, has gotten his hands on a lot of documentation and correspondence, and there was never any doubt by anyone involved that was the recording. It could be. I mean, I can't say too much about it because the book and everything. But it could just be that George Martin misunderstood something that was said in a conversation over lunch with Harry Saltzman, who was one of the co-producers. But there were even press releases that came out, even before McCartney recorded the song, saying that, he was going to do it and they wanted the Fifth Dimension to also do a version of it for a different section of the film. Paul was going to do it during the title credits, but the Fifth Dimension was going to do it. Then the Fifth Dimension dropped out for various reasons that probably had to do with management, and they were going to get Sissy Houston. And then she dropped out because, again, a management thing. She was switching companies. And they finally got, for the alternate version that's in a scene in the film, a singer called B.J. Arno. Do either of you remember her version? It's on the soundtrack album.
It slips my mind.
Yeah. She was like a soul jazz singer, and it's her version's quite nice. But anyway, there was never any doubt. I mean, and basically the producers, from their point of view, say that when they first heard it, they thought it was great. Exactly why George Martin got that in mind, or whether he was simply myth building, which is very possible, because it's a great story. It really is a great story.
It is.
But it just...
If I remember what he said, he thought the producers preferred someone, or they were thinking of someone along the lines of a Shirley Bassey or someone that's already had success with a Bond film.
Right, but he was commissioned not just to write the song for them. I mean, there was a contract for this. And the terms of the contract are that he records the song with Wings, and then there's all kinds of details in the contract about who gets paid what for writing, for performing, that George Martin would be brought in to do the orchestration for the single, and then subsequently, John Barry had done all of the Bond soundtrack music, but for various reasons he wasn't available. So this lunch that George Martin went to where this conversation supposedly took place was really a lunch to talk to George Martin about doing the rest of the soundtrack music. And he may have just, one theory, actually a theory of Adrian's, and I hope I'm not saying too much, they may get really mad at me. Adrian's theory is that maybe what they were talking about was, perhaps by the time George Martin went to lunch with them, the Fifth Dimension had dropped out for the second version of the song, and they might have been asking who George Martin thought would be good for that. But there was never any doubt that the title credit one was the recording that he produced. So there's a myth we've exploded right here on Things We Said Today. And,
okay.
And you can read more about it when the book finally comes out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alan, for that. Not only that, but the hit version was so perfect the way it was. Yeah. I mean, it's such a great example of Paul and George Martin working after the Beatles. How ideal he was for a song like this.
It's also a great example of how quickly Paul can toss off a really great track if he wants to. He took a weekend and devoted one day to reading the novel, the Ian Fleming book, and then the next day, like Saturday, he read the book. Sunday, he's sitting in his house in Cavendish Street, and Denny Sewell came over and saw him write it, like right in his presence, in no time at all. And he talks about that. I don't know if he talked about that when he was on the show, but
yeah, he did.
Did he?
I think he said it took him like half an hour to write the whole song.
Yeah. So, and he said, I believe he contributed the change into the reggae beat, Denny.
Right. Although Paul has always said that Linda helped to, well, she suggested the reggae part, the reggae arrangement there. So.
Success has many fathers and mothers.
That's right.
All right, let's get to another song. A song called Did We Meet Somewhere Before, which actually turned up in the Ramones film called Rock and Roll High School, which came out in 1979. And I've got some background information about that if you guys want to know.
Sure.
Actually, the song was supposed to be the theme song for Heaven Can Wait, the Warren Beatty movie, but it was rejected for the film. And instead, Paul used it, Paul decided to just give it for that other movie, for Rock and Roll High School. Actually, in 1978, we're going to talk about the next song same time next year. It's kind of ironic. He wrote two songs that ended up being rejected by the film company for the movies that they were to represent. So... But Did We Meet Somewhere Before is a very pretty song, and when it was in the movie, they only had about a minute and a half most of the song to feature, and we never heard the full version, at least I didn't, until it was on the Cold Cuts bootleg.
Right.
So, Alan, you want to say anything about that song?
Not really. It's it's an attractive song. It has certain moves that there are certain moves in it that you just can't quite place where you've heard him do them before. I actually listened to a bunch of tracks where I thought it was, but it wasn't. But it's, it's pretty classically him, and it hasn't actually been officially released yet, right? I mean, it's just on the Cold Cuts boot. Yeah.
That's right. So you got to wonder where it's going to turn up. If it's 1978, could be like London Town or something. I don't know.
So that reminds me of my other idea that Universal should do. Well, actually, Universal can't do it. Now Capitol could do it. Wait, Capitol sort of is part of Universal now, isn't it? It's so
Yes.
confusing. We were talking before the show about, these various, compilations of greatest hits and, pure McCartney and whatever that he periodically puts out. And he has never yet collected his film songs. And, it actually, because to prepare for this show, I think we probably all made playlists with all the songs on it. And there's some great stuff that people don't know because either they didn't get the soundtrack album or it didn't come out or in some cases was rejected and didn't end up on a B-side or as a bonus track as some of them did, like Same Time Next Year. But, this would be an opportunity for him to also bring out Did We Meet Somewhere Before? And,
Right.
And there are a number of other things. And I think it would make actually, the playlist plays really well. I did mine chronologically. And, I think that would be an unusual compilation, not a greatest hits compilation, obviously, although Live and Let Die is, big hit. And there's some great stuff. So maybe they should think about that.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. We'll pass it along to our friends at Universal.
Really, the thing is, so many of these songs were just scattered on soundtrack albums or just singles.
Yeah.
So it's nice to put it all in one compact package like that. Would be really a great idea. I think so. Any thoughts about Did We Meet Somewhere Before, Steve?
No, I don't have any thoughts about that.
Do you like the song?
Yeah, it's okay. But no, I didn't have any real thoughts about it. So
Well, it's just another of the many nice ballads that Paul's done through the years. Great melody. I think it might run a little bit too long, the full version, but I like the song a lot. So many of these songs that Paul did for films are ballads, and they fit nicely where they're placed in many cases. And then we have to talk about Same Time Next Year, because even though it wasn't used in the film, I think personally it was a great song. I can't see how it could have been rejected. It was actually passed up in favor of The Last Time I Felt Like This. This is the Alan Alda film, Same Time Next Year. And The Last Time I Felt Like This was a Johnny Mathis recording that was used instead. I think that was with Denise Williams. But Same Time Next Year was the start of when Lawrence Juber joined Wings. That was the first session that he worked on. And really nice orchestration on that song, too. It's one of those songs that's the last song that I play every year on my show. So I can tell people, I'll see you same time next year. But, it really does fit and tells the whole storyline of the movie. And what do you guys think of that song? Steve?
I like the song. I like the movie a lot. But, I like that song. I do.
Yeah,
Alan?
me too. It's attractive. I thought it would have been perfect for the film. I can't quite even remember the Johnny Mathis song, but that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't good. But I think of this when I think of the film, even though it wasn't in the film.
Yeah. That's true. Well, that song is pretty much ingrained in my memory. It's just, there are certain songs that I know from being on Cold Cuts, and I grew to love them when the bootleg came out, and they stood out for me as songs where I said, why didn't Paul release this?
Yeah.
It wasn't officially released until it was a bonus track on Put It There for the CD single. But let's move on to another song, another ballad called Twice in a Lifetime. What do you think about that one, Alan?
I really actually like that one, except for the saxophone solo kind of thing. And not that there's anything wrong with the saxophone playing itself. It's just that all these 80s films seem to have the sax and usually the sort of cheesy sounding electric piano. At least it doesn't have that. The sax sound for me really dates it to the early to mid 80s. And but apart from that, as a song, I kind of like it. I actually, as soon as the film came out on video, I rented it just so that I could tape the song off the film soundtrack.
Yeah.
So it's It's a good track, not probably the best thing he's done or anything, or even among his film songs, but it does the job. It's very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing extra special about it. It's a good track. That's about a good description for it. So.
Well, so many of these songs still have very strong melodies to them.
Yeah.
And really good arrangements. And you listen to McCartney music for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. And for me, the voice has always been really important to me. And Paul's vocals on so many of these songs are just really phenomenal, especially Same Time Next Year and Twice in a Lifetime.
Yeah.
I've always loved those songs. And I remember going to the movie theater just to hear the song, which only played during the end credits. And it wasn't the full version anyway.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very pleased when I did hear the full version, which ended up as a bonus track on Pipes of Peace. And just to hear the full version of it was nice to hear. Mm-hmm. So, a nice little addition there in the McCartney catalog. Then we move on to Give My Regards to Broad Street.
Hey,
and we could do a whole show just on
what about
the
Honorary
soundtrack in
Consul?
the movie. Oh, I don't know if I'm doing this in perfect chronological order.
Okay.
Let's do Honorary Consul first then.
Okay,
I know that you have a lot to say about that.
Well, I don't know about a lot, but we could do it. We could do it sort of quickly. It's a song that hardly anybody knows. It's an instrumental. The released version, there actually is no released Paul McCartney version. There could have been. The released version was by the guitarist John Williams, who was, when I was growing up and studying classical guitar, he was like one of my heroes. And this is not the best playing of John Williams. It's a fairly simple track, and he plays the melody, and it definitely has his sound if you know John Williams' sound. Mm-hmm. I talked to John Williams about this, and he told me, and in fact played for me the outtakes. There was originally the idea was that he and Paul were going to do it as a duet with pretty simple percussion stuff going on, and they recorded it. They recorded several takes of it, and they're really nice. I believe there is one of them. One of the takes got onto the bootleg, The Complete Songs the Beatles Gave Away. But then the film producers didn't like that version for whatever reason, and when it was time to record the remake, Paul wasn't available. So John Williams did it on his own. This version has percussion and flute, like a recorder, kind of a woody sounding flute. And then just John Williams. John Williams released it as a single. Classical guys don't often release singles, but he did. It's also, you can find it on an album called Film Tracks, The Best of British Film Music. And, it's a pretty theme, a little like Love in the Open Air in a way. Fairly simple, fairly, catchy, the way Paul McCartney tunes tend to be. There's one thing the guy can do, it's write a tune. And, so, I would say if you haven't heard the John Williams recording, try and find Film Tracks and listen to that, or get the bootleg of the Complete Songs the Beatles Gave Away and hear the duet version with Paul.
It might be on YouTube. I haven't checked, but
it could be. I haven't looked either.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It probably is. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if all of this stuff isn't there.
Yeah.
I've never
Steve,
seen
what
the
are
film.
your thoughts about this? Oh.
What was that, Alan?
I was just saying I've never seen the film. Have either of you?
No, I have. I don't know anything about this song at all. I haven't heard it. So.
Oh, it's very pretty. Like Alan said, it has a Spanish guitar feel to it, which I like a lot. And it is a pretty melody, very much like Alan said, like The Family Way was. It's very nice. I like it, and I think there are flutes or recorders in there too, and it's a very pretty song.
Yep.
Okay, so now we talk about Give My Regards to Broad Street, but let's just talk first of all about No More Lonely Nights, because that was such a huge hit for Paul, was a top 10 hit here in the States, and I've always felt that it's one of his best ballads. He's given us so many of them, but as far as hits are concerned, this one's one of the tops for me anyway, and the recording of it was just superb. Paul's vocals are amazing. Dave Gilmour doing the lead guitar work. I've always felt this is one of his best singles, certainly as ballads. Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like that song too. And in fact, I mean, I know we'll get all the sort of angry mail now, but I actually kind of like "Give My Regards to Broad Street." I think I'm the only one who does, with the possible exception of Ken. I mean, I'm just guessing there, but
I like most of Broad Street, but I don't equate that with the same thing as all the other McCartney albums, because it's mainly covers.
Of his own,
so I don't look
stuff.
at it as yeah.
But there were like four, I think four new songs on there.
Three. Well,
Three?
actually, yeah, four, if you include the instrumental of Goodnight Lonely Princess.
Yeah.
That would be four, yeah.
Right. So, but No More Lonely Nights, I thought, was really a great song. And there were, as you know, several mixes of it and extended 12 inches and all that. Hard to keep track of. But I thought it was very strong, and I thought the video for it was really pretty good too. And I think it is one of the best things about the film, which I didn't find that bad. But to me, the film is fundamentally the same story. You wouldn't know it unless you really sort of think about it. It's the same story as A Hard Day's Night. Mm-hmm. And in Hard Day's Night, Ringo's gone missing, and they don't know if he's going to be back in time for the show. And in this case, the tape of the album has gone missing, and they don't know if they're going to get it back in time. So it's basically the same thing. But I thought that a lot of what he did with those covers of his own stuff, the remakes and in some cases reorchestrations, I thought were really inventive visually. So yeah, it kind of worked for me, but what can I say? So now you can't say I'm always down on McCartney,
Well, dare I ask, Steve?
Well,
without doing a whole show on this,
I'll make
it brief.
I'll make up for what Alan said about not complaining about it, because the movie almost got me punched out. Let's put it that way, because my friend and I, who I will not name, but he's probably listening to this, saw the show, and we could see right away that this was not going to be a great night for McCartney, and we were inexcusably talking to each other during the show, and the guy sitting in front of us, who is very big, turned around and said, "If you don't shut up, I'm going to, and I'll just let you guys fill in the blank." But No More Lonely Nights was actually one of the few bright spots of that movie. It really was. I mean, it's a great song, and it's too bad the whole movie wasn't as good as that. I still don't think the movie was all that great, but that's whatever.
That's another show.
That's another show. So there.
But what about the music?
Oh, I like that. I mean, the re-recordings of the Beatles stuff, the fact that he got Ringo to do it and that George Martin was involved. I mean, that was, looking back on at the time when you saw the movie, you didn't think too much about that. But now, I mean, it's great that they were able to do that. I don't see a lot of people these days recognizing the re-recordings as any big deal. I don't think people really think about that much. But it is kind of interesting that that it was both Paul and Ringo involved, and George Martin. So, but
a few other talented people besides them,
right?
Too,
Yeah, right. That's true.
Dave Edmunds, Eric Stewart.
No, that's true too. But the movie itself, that movie just bombed badly, and I'm not going to argue that it should have gone over better than it did, because it really shouldn't have. But
okay. Well, at some point we'll do a show on the movie itself.
There we go.
But the music, I think, was fine. I mean, I can't look at this the same way as I would a new McCartney album of all new material. But it was nice for him to cover the Beatles stuff. I'm not going to make a comparison as to which is better, but it's nice to have alternate versions of some of these songs. It's nice to hear For No One with him playing it on acoustic guitar with strings. I like that arrangement. I thought the whole medley of Yesterday, Here, There, and Everywhere, and Wanderlust worked really well. And I also love the version of The Long and Winding Road in there. Kind of schmaltzy, but, that's one of my favorite Beatles songs where you can probably do no wrong with it, as far as I'm concerned. And I love the new songs in there too. But yeah, I thought that, the music was fine and it worked very well for the movie. Whether you thought the movie itself worked is a whole other ballgame. So we'll talk about that in another show. But right around that time, in fact, when Give My Regards 3 premiered in theaters, we also got this little animated film called Rupert and the Frog Song. And we all, at least I hope most McCartney fans know that Paul intended to make a full-length feature film on Rupert. Rupert is a bear who's very popular, has been very popular, I think, since the beginning of the 1900s. He's kind of like the Winnie the Pooh of England. That's how I look at it. And Paul always loved the character. And he wrote a whole soundtrack for a full-length feature film, which has been bootlegged. And the full-length feature film has never come out, but this animated short did with the song We All Stand Together, which became a monster hit in the UK. It actually went to number 2. A lot of people aren't aware of how big a hit that was in the UK. But how about your thoughts on We All Stand Together? We'll start with Steve.
I love this song. Absolutely adore it. Just seeing you can't really not talk about this without talking about the film. The film was delightful, and so is the music. I mean, it synced so well with the film. If there's one, if we're gonna mention a top 5 list of songs, and we didn't really put one together, but if of his soundtrack songs, that would be on it. I think it's a great song. It's a wonderful.
You love
song.
It that much?
Yeah, I really do. I really do.
I'm kind of surprised.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, so many people rank on that song, and
really?
I think it's uncalled for because people forget what the purpose was of the song. That it's to be used in an animated children's film with animals in it. It's very Disney-esque to me. Alan?
I just wanted to mention that the Winnie the Pooh of England was actually Winnie the Pooh because A.A. Milne was English. But
okay.
Anyway, I really loathe the frog song. I mean,
really?
I'm sorry.
Why?
Yeah, it is just too damn cute. I can't stand it. It's like if someone is like just pouring sugar into your mouth. You come on already. No, it's just and it also this for the same reason I dislike Wonderful Christmas Time.
Really?
It has these sort of hooks that you can't get out of your head once you hear it, and even if you don't like it, it just keeps coming back. And it's one of my least favorite McCartney songs. Now, that said, if I were Universal and were doing this soundtrack collection that I'm mentioning, I definitely would include it because it is what it is. I thought the film was cute, cute in a way that is bearable, and it was fine, but I understand, his fascination with Rupert and all that. I just hate the song. Sorry.
I think you have to look at it in the context of the film. I mean, we're trying to separate the songs outside the context of the various films. In this case, I think you do because it's an integral part of that film, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so good. I really do.
Do you like Disney music, Alan?
Not generally.
Okay, well,
I think Disney is the devil, apart from Andrew Lloyd Webber. But
oh, God,
what?
Now we're really in trouble. You've really gotten us in trouble now.
No, I don't. I mean, and especially current Disney stuff, like from Beauty and the Beast on, and I hate that stuff. I just hate that stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Toy Story, Lion King.
I don't even remember the music for Toy Story, but yeah,
that's not Andrew Lloyd Webber.
No, it's not.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that Disney and Andrew Lloyd Webber to me are both
okay.
Oh boy. Okay. All right.
Well, I have a different opinion than you do, Alan, because I just think that it works for this context, and you have to put it in that context.
This is what makes our show so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you're condemning Paul for having a talent where he writes hooks that stay in your head. I mean, that is a gift. and we should applaud him for that. And instead, you feel like if it's a song that you can't get the song out of your head, like, you should be critical of him for that reason.
Well, no.
That is a talent.
Here's the thing. If it's a song I like, I don't mind it being in my head all day. But if it's a song I hate in the first place, I want to be able to escape it. There's a Roald Dahl story. We might have talked about this before when we talked about, Paul's Hooks, where this guy composes a song that is so catchy that it actually kills you. And it's sort of like that a little, Also, there's, Monty Python ripped it off with the funniest joke in the world. Remember that Monty Python sketch?
Yeah.
So it's a little like that. I mean, sometimes things do what they are supposed to do too well.
Well, I think if you have a song stuck in your head, that must mean that to some degree you like it.
No,
you may not want to admit it. Yes, admit it, Alan.
It's a small world after all. Now I really messed you guys up. Probably messed everybody else up because they're going to be hearing that.
I used to know. I have friends who have pretty much the same opinion of the song, and if I want to be mean, all I have to do is go, wow, 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 wow. It's the very first sound of the song, and that is enough to make them not be able to get it out of their head all day.
Oh my!
The problem is, of course, it's like a boomerang.
Well, I wouldn't mind that. No, keep doing it. Anyway, so we go to a similar type song because it's another animated song from Paul, Tropic Island Hum. By the way, there was a wonderful DVD that came out called Paul McCartney, The Animation Collection, which has 3 animated shorts. We're going to be talking right now about Tropic Island Hum. Rupert and the Frog Song was the first one. And Tropic Island Hum is very much in the same vein. When I hear something like this, I'm thinking of The Jungle Book, something like that, like The Bare Necessities. When I hear a song like Tropic Island Hum, it has that kind of ring to it. And it's up-tempo, it's catchy as hell. That's another one. You hear the melody, you can't get it out of your head. And I like Linda's part in the song. She did a really good job. And again, just proving how suitable Paul is, how adaptable he is for this kind of music. Alan.
Yeah, I like this one better.
Well, thanks.
Which isn't saying a hell of a lot.
Yeah, it isn't saying a hell of a lot. I like it better, and it for whatever it is that I find so annoying about the frog song isn't in this. So it's but I don't have a lot much more to say about it. It's attractive,
But
I'll
it's
pass
also
it on
so catchy.
Yeah.
It's
catchy.
If that was in a full-length feature film, and that's the title track, if it was a successful film, a lot of people would remember it.
Yeah.
And just like a Disney film, it really is. Steve?
It's okay. I'm not, it's not, I wouldn't put it as one of Paul's greatest hits, but it's okay.
I'm not saying it's one of Paul's greatest hits. I'm just
no,
saying
I know you're not.
Purpose.
I'm saying that it's okay for what it is. So I think it's not a significant song. So
yeah, it's catchy as hell. It stays in my head. I think it works for the purpose of this film.
Well, okay, your opinion. So, all right. Anyway.
What about the next film, which was called Tuesday? What do you think of that, Steve?
I did not get a chance to see this, and so I'm really kind of unfamiliar with it, I have to admit. So,
how much of it was used in that film? Because the track is like 12 and a half minutes.
Well, the entire film has got music throughout the whole thing.
And is it all from this? Because I haven't seen that film either. But
yeah. I mean, there's that. There's also, I believe, a version that was on Working Classical.
Right.
Of it, and it's got a classical feel to it. It's very pretty, very background. It's not something where you're going to be, humming the melody over and over again, like you would Tropic Island Hum or We All Stand Together. But it's really good instrumental stuff. Very much, it could fit like on one of Paul's classical works.
Well, it is.
Okay.
It's on working, as you say, it's on working classical, and it is a classical piece. I mean, I go farther than to say it has a classical feel. It's a totally classical piece. It's a pretty conservative classical piece. It's a lot like, I don't know if people haven't heard stuff by Frederick Delius. It's that kind of thing, the sort of what they call the English pastoral school of the early 20th century. And, it's really nicely done. It's really nicely orchestrated. I kind of have always liked the idea that he's that interested in this kind of music to want to devote himself to doing it. I mean, it doesn't sound like something that he just sort of doodled off on a synth and handed to an orchestrator, which maybe it was, but it sounds reasonably well thought out, and it goes over 12 and a half minutes. That's reasonable amount of time, and I like working classical and the pieces on it, and that's one of them. So, and I know it mainly from that. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to have that DVD of Paul McCartney's animated collection all together, having all three shorts there. And it's a nice film, too. Again, with frogs. And I think Paul has an obsession with frogs.
I see.
I don't know what it is. But
he still feels guilty for having burned one when he was a kid on a light bulb.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, he talked about it probably in many years ago. He's talked about it a couple of times, how he and his brother used to do that. I mean, I don't think we should dwell on it, but yeah. It's something that's obviously he remembers and feels bad about now that he's like an animal rights guy.
You mean many years from now?
Many years from now, right.
Yeah. And actually, if you do watch that animated film for Tuesday, Dustin Hoffman does some voice work in there. And if you listen very carefully, it's about, I think, 3 or 4 minutes into the film. There's a man in a kitchen. He's got the radio on, and you can hear the old standard Tenderly, and you can hear Paul sing it very faintly.
Here's some trivia for you. Dustin Hoffman. We know that Dustin Hoffman and Paul are pals, and that, he wrote Picasso's last words basically on a dare from Dustin Hoffman, but you can't write a song right now. But if you look at a lot, I haven't looked at every single one, but an awful lot of Dustin Hoffman films have some sort of Beatles reference in it. In, what was it, Hook, the Peter Pan one? When the little girl is in her room and Peter Pan comes in, you see she's got little Beatles statuettes all over the place. In Tootsie, when he's sharing a room with Jessica Lange, and she has the big London Palladium Beatles poster on her wall. And there are some other ones too. I can't remember them offhand, but I just remember being struck by, every time I went to a Dustin Hoffman film for a while, there was some Beatles reference. Obviously not. It's not in The Graduate. It's not in Marathon Man probably, but
no. Maybe that's Dustin's influence. We don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if it's a little in-joke that he has them somehow do in his films.
Okay. Let's do another song. This is the theme for the movie Maybe Baby, which is Paul's cover of the Buddy Holly song. And to me, I mean, Jeff Lynne produced it. It's got Jeff Lynne production all over it. If you were told that Paul was going to cover Maybe Baby and Jeff Lynne produced it, it would sound like this. Yep. You'd probably have it in your head anyway. But it's still fun. It's still fun to hear. Alan, what do you think?
It's a really rockin' version of Maybe Baby. I really like it. It is a mere 2 minutes. It's actually less than 2 minutes. It's 1:58. Wouldn't have minded if he worked out a little more on it, but it has great sounds, and we know Paul's connection to Buddy Holly and the Buddy Holly catalog and all of that. So it's just a fun track.
Right.
Yeah. Anytime he's done Buddy Holly, he's always put a lot into it. I mean, even something short like this. So yeah, I mean, there's no surprise that it's a good version. So
okay. There's one that I skipped over, And that's Spies Like Us.
Oh, yeah.
Can't believe I didn't say that one. All right.
I can't believe you didn't say that one either.
Yeah, well, I've got a list in front of me, and I just missed that one. That's all.
Yep.
So, Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, that one is okay. It kind of has some nice effects on it, and it's really not a bad song. The film went nowhere. Probably the song is the best thing about the film. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it. Actually, I kind of like it, you know. It's, again, it does the job, you know. It has a kind of humorous quality to it. Well, maybe I'm influenced also by the video that they made for it, which was actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it fits the film was supposed to be. And it's not a bad track, and it kind of made us think that the stuff on Press was going to be better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go back to our Press to Play show. I love Press to Play. I will always defend it. Anyway, Steve.
I like Spies Like Us. It's a good standout single. I think you know. I think I think he did a good job with it, and I agree with Alan. To be honest, I haven't seen the movie, but judging from the reaction to the song versus the reaction to the movie, I would say the song is better than the movie. So there we go.
Well, the song for me, I've always loved the sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
It really, especially the way it's produced. Lyrically, it's lacking something, you know, in some of the verses. Ooh, ooh, what do you do? No one else can dance like you. But then there's some good lines in there, too. We get there by hook or by crook. We don't do a thing by the book. You know, I like lines like that. And it's extremely catchy. I love how it rocks out at the end. Mm-hmm. And I especially love that whole middle section. Really has a very electronic 80s sound to it, but I still think it sounds very contemporary. I kind of wish he would bring that out.
I wouldn't call it contemporary. I'd
I
say,
think so.
No, I think it's definitely sounds dated, but I still think it's a good song. So. Well,
I kind of disagree. I think it sounds very fresh, and I think that it would work really well live.
Oh, I agree there. I think it would be great live. I think a lot of fun to do it live. That's another one that he could easily pull out and have some fun with, sure.
Yeah, but the whole arrangement really is what makes it stand out for me, especially that middle bit. You know, the heavy drums, the guitar solo, everything about it. I think it was very well done. So let's do another song, and let's talk about Vanilla Sky for the Cameron Crowe film. Steve, let's start with you.
It's a ballad. It wasn't. It's kind of the reverse of Spies Like Us, although that film actually went nowhere. I mean, that, as I recall it, it didn't really do anything. But, it was okay. I wouldn't call it, if you're putting out a McCartney's Greatest Hits, I don't think that song's going to be on it. So.
Alan?
But it can be on the film song compilation.
True.
It doesn't do a lot for me either. I don't actively dislike it, but it's it's an attractive McCartney melody. It again has that sort of fluty thing that you get also in Honorary Console, and but yeah, it's just a nice song. I don't remember anything about the film actually. I have the DVD, but I probably got the DVD because I think there's a McCartney featurette on it.
Oh, is there? Okay.
I thought there might. Think there was.
Okay.
Huh. Well, I actually love Vanilla Sky a lot. And because I do like the acoustic side of Paul, and I like the lyrics, I like the imagery in the lyrics, the sound of it, Paul's vocals, it has a bit of a jazz feel to it. And again, with the flutes, it's either flutes or recorders that he uses in there. It has a nice feel to it. It's a simple song, but, I think it works in this context. It was actually nominated for a Grammy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is the kind of song, I love the acoustic side of Paul. Whenever he does these 2-3 minute acoustic songs that have a really nice melody to them, and his voice just works so well with it. And I like it a lot. I think it's a very underrated song.
hadn't one of you guys said that Once Upon a Long Ago was also intended as a film song last week?
Well, yeah, I read that it was supposed to be Paul writing it for The Princess Bride.
Uh-huh.
And I think Wikipedia lists it as such, as well as Beautiful Night from Flaming Pie, and Rob Reiner turned it down. Now, I don't know how accurate that is.
Right.
But then Paul released it himself, and it was a top 10 hit in the UK. So, so they are Rob Reiner.
Flaming Pie was much later, though, right? Or was Beautiful Night that early a song?
Oh, Beautiful Night was an early song. Yeah, it was done around 1986 or so. There's the early version that came out that Paul released himself on one of the CD singles from Flaming Pie, and it's been bootlegged. And there's an early version that has members of Billy Joel's band backing up Paul.
Seem to be blanking out on that. But Once Upon a Long Ago is, it's one of those songs that, the puppy dog tails thing. I mean, come on. But there's some nice stuff in it, including violin solo from Nigel Kennedy, who was a classical violinist or classical / sometimes rock violinist. He also played on Kate Bush Running Up that hill. And he's a wacko. I mean that in a good way. So, I kind of, there are things I like about that song, things I really dislike about that song, but I included it in my playlist for film songs. So that's what I was asking, because one of you said that. Yeah.
Once Upon a Long Ago, I love. There's a lot behind the arrangement, especially there's a middle part where there's a lot of harmony work, and it kind of sounds like a madrigal. We talked about counter melody with McCartney.
Yeah.
Listen to Once Upon a Long Ago.
Yeah.
That whole middle part there with Paul and Linda working on their vocals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that I felt was put behind that song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm that crazy about the lyrics.
Yeah.
But that could be stream of consciousness lyrics from Paul.
Sure.
You never know.
Yeah. Lyrics need a touch up, but the music on that is really good. You're right.
Yeah. Didn't Once Upon a Long Ago get promoted more in Europe than in America?
Yeah, I don't know. Was it even released here?
Right.
It was never.
That's what I was thinking, that it never really got much of a release here. I mean, I do like the song. I thought it was good. I never understood why America got, can I use the word screwed?
It's weird.
Song.
It never got released here, and yet in England and even Japan, I mean, he made 1 million TV appearances playing it.
Yeah.
And I don't, I never understood why that song did not get any promotion here. I just don't. There was no. It's not like it's Mull of Kintyre, for God's sake. I mean, why do that? It's a good song. It probably would have done very well here had he taken, given it a chance. So
I don't know the full story behind that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a few more songs left. How about I Want to Come Home, which was in the Robert De Niro film Everybody's Fine. We'll start with you, Steve.
That was an okay ballad. I mean, it fizzled out and died rather quickly, and it wasn't what I would call a blockbuster song. It was what it was. There's really nothing distinguishable about it as far as I'm concerned.
But why do you mean it fizzled out?
Because it wasn't that good of a song.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Well, I do. I don't think it was that great. I mean, it just wasn't. It really. I mean, it went nowhere. And for a very.
There's a full show we could do with why the newer solo music of the Beatles doesn't go anywhere.
I don't think that has nothing to do with this.
This has a lot to do with it.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
It's not that good of a song. Don't try and make this a better song than it is, Al.
I think it's a very good song.
Fine.
Every time I do.
Well, I don't think so. Okay.
Well, that doesn't mean that you're right.
No, but it doesn't mean that you are either. And you're taking over the opinion and saying, yeah, but it's a great song. you may not be you may be the only one out there.
I feel like I should put on my referee shirt and stride into the ring.
No, what I am arguing about here is that when you say it fizzled out, what do you mean? That radio would have played this song if it was a good song?
Yeah.
No. Radio barely plays Paul McCartney's newer music. And that's just a fact.
They would have played
and if you think the only criteria behind whether or not a song does well is because it's good, I've got a bridge I could sell you.
Did it get any airplay at all? Did it get any airplay?
I didn't hear it. So
okay.
There's a lot of McCartney stuff that doesn't get airplay.
That says it right there.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
New album got
you can't just say if radio doesn't play it, it's not a good song.
Help.
No.
I don't listen to the radio, so I can't tell you anything.
Yeah. Well, radio plays a little bit of Paul's new music, and that's about it. And it has nothing to do with the quality of it.
If you like this song, fine. I don't particularly think it's one of McCartney's great songs.
I didn't say it's one of his great songs. He's written a lot of great songs.
But I think it's trying to pump it more than it deserves.
I think it deserves more attention.
Fine, that's your opinion.
I like it a lot.
It's your opinion, okay?
And that's what we're here for.
And that's what we're here for. Alan,
I think it's okay. Actually, it's one of those songs that since it's 2009. I never listened to it that much when it came out. I just sort of got it, put it in the playlist, listened to it once or twice, thought, well, okay, well, whatever, on to the next thing. I didn't find it that memorable. But when I was listening in the context of the film song playlist this week, I kind of thought, hey, that's not a bad song. Why don't I? Why haven't I heard that more? So I'm not saying it's one of his best songs or anything like that, but I think it, it has a lot of those characteristics that we like about Paul's songs. It's okay. It's I'm coming down, I guess, somewhere between the two of you here.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, in the whole scope of things, I don't think it's any weaker than, say, Twice in a Lifetime, which I think is a very good song. I mean, where's the difference here? I don't understand the criteria of what you're saying about I Want to Come Home that makes it not a good song.
Because it's just out there. It's an isolated, putting it out there as an isolated song. It doesn't. There's nothing too attractive about it. At least I don't see it.
What do you mean an isolated song? It's a song for a movie, and that's it. It's not on a McCartney album. It doesn't belong there. It's a song he contributed for a movie. So It's isolated from the rest of his catalog.
Right.
The same way many of these other songs were.
But it's just not that interesting a song as far as I'm concerned.
What makes it not interesting? Do you like the melody of it?
No, not particularly. It's pretty. It's very low key. It doesn't. There's nothing really hook. There's no real hook there as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, after a few listens, I've been hooked. It stays in my head.
Fine.
Okay.
So
all right, the next song, which is debatable to put in here, but we've been talking about this. Hope for the Future. It's really for a video game. It's not for a movie, but yet it's soundtrack music. So, what do you think of Hope for the Future, Alan?
Not so fond of it.
And why's that?
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I mean, maybe I was sort of overhyped on it when it was about to come out. I mean, the game production company guys were telling me that Paul thought this was the best thing he ever wrote, which I'm sure he didn't think and maybe never even said. But, it led me to expect a really great track, and it just turned out to be, to me, a little kind of boilerplate hopefulness kind of thing. It didn't really grab me in any way. And again, there are like 18 versions of it, so it's that puts it up there with Où est le Soleil in my book. 18 versions of a track I don't like that I have.
Okay.
Well, don't take it out on the song if there's a lot of versions of it.
That's
just the main version you don't like.
Yeah, it just seems a little weak to me.
And how so? As the lyrics are very positive, it conveys the message.
Yeah, it's positive, but it seems like phoned in positive to me. I don't know. It just never really grabbed me. But again, it may also be the context of the whole hype thing too, which is something that, it's just me personally because of dealing with these guys. Wouldn't be something that anybody out there would have had to have dealt with. So, that's just the residue of that, perhaps. Ask me in 10 years.
Okay. Hey, it could always change.
Yeah.
Steve?
And I'm going to, here we go again. I love this song a lot. I really, really do. I love the production, I love the production on the song, the way his voice came and the music came, combined on this thing. I really like this song. I do not particularly like the version that was on Pure McCartney, but the remixes were. I really like the remixes. And it's funny. I bought Destiny after, to hear the song, and I never heard the song on the game. So I don't know where the song. I had trouble getting through the game, but on top of that, because I'm not that great of a video game player. But if anybody knows where the song is in the game, tell me. Because I always wondered, but no, I love the song. I really did. I thought it was a great song.
Well, I'm not a video game player at all. I only cared about the song.
Okay.
Full disclosure here, but I think this is a great song, and I think so because of everything put behind it. The orchestration is wonderful. Giles Martin did a great job producing the song. I love the lyrics, the positive message in it, and really good words. We will build bridges up to the sky, heavenly lights together, you and I. Really nice lyrics in the song, and a great build-up melodically. I love everything about it. The horns in there. So
what's funny, that has nothing to do with the game, at least the way I interpreted the game, having played it. It has nothing. This whole thing about hope for the future, you're kind of expecting McCartney or that to be a part of the game, and it's not. At least the way I played the game, my experience with the game, it was not that. It was not part of it. But again, I'm not what I would call a video game expert. I did buy the game and I did play it. And for anybody that is interested, you can go down to GameSpot and probably get a copy pretty cheap nowadays. If you have a PS3 or a PS4 or a Xbox, if you want to have it in your collection, the used copies are very cheap. But the question is, where on this dumb game is the song? I don't know, but I do like the song, I have to say. So
okay, all right. So now we get to a very recent song called "In the Blink of an Eye," which was in the film Ethel and Ernest: A True Story, and kind of in the same vein to me as "I Want to Come Home." Very nice, gentle ballad with a nice melody and all, and I personally like it. How about you, Alan?
Yeah, it is up sort of in the same league as "I Want to Come Home." It's it's an attractive song. It does suffer a bit from the current state of his voice, I think. And I have to say, on the playlist also, since it's the last one on mine anyway, there's a huge leap in the vocal sound from everything else to that one, and there's just that. But the song itself is okay. Didn't really dislike it or love it. Basically, that's what I have to say.
Okay.
Steve.
And Steve?
I think the song. I agree with Alan pretty much. I think the song would have been a lot better had his voice been a lot better. And I think that's the one thing that drags the song down. And it's too bad that that's the case. And you basically have to. That's one of the big factors that renders the judgment of the song. But yeah, the voice, his vocalizing on that song doesn't help it at all. Not at all.
I know when I first heard the song, it was noticeable to me about his voice, but I've gotten so used to it. It doesn't really bother me all that much. Mm-hmm. But I still think it's a pretty good song, very pleasant, and I certainly would like to see a collection like Alan has suggested.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent idea. And we have connections. We could probably tell them about it. We probably should.
If anything, it would make the public aware of how much work he's really done for films. Mm. And it's very easy, even for people like us, to overlook a lot if you don't think about it. But and there may have been a song or two that we didn't include here. If there is, I hope one of our listeners writes to us. But this was a lot of fun discussing Paul's work for films.
It was.
Anything else you guys want to add?
I just think listening to the whole playlist was just a very interesting experience, because there is actually a lot of different kinds of music here. And, some things I like, some things I don't like, some things I'm lukewarm about. But nevertheless, I really think that it overall is a really good collection of stuff. So this has been a great discussion, talking about Paul's soundtrack music, his music composed for films.
Very spirited.
Who knows? It may get even more spirited in upcoming shows.
Oh, yes. See? Maybe so.
You'd like that, wouldn't you, Steve?
I'm not going to say anything.
Uh-huh.
So, anyways.
So if you would like to get in touch with us, let's start with Steve. Why don't you give everyone our contact information and your personal contact information?
Our contact information is Things We Said Today Radio Show at gmail.com. We're on Twitter at Things We Said Fab. We have a Facebook. Actually, there's two Facebook pages. The show's Facebook page is Things We Said Today Beatle fans. There's a Things We Said Today Facebook page that's actually connected to Fab4 Radio that runs the show every week. Thank you, Matt. We never say thank you to Matt. But
isn't it
Matt,
Things We Said Today Beatles Radio fans?
Right.
The Facebook page.
Did I say, what did I say?
Left Out Radio.
Beatles fans? Oh, okay. Beatles Radio fans. There we go. And we're always posting information on the show on the Beatles Radio fans page. And we're individually, I have a personal Facebook page that really is for Beatles stuff and other stuff. But for Beatles stuff, all completely, it's Beatle news and information. Join there, and there's all sorts of stuff being posted. Those stories that I do, and other stories that are happening, and Beatles stories that are happening, and who knows? Every day is a surprise. So there you go. Oh, wait a minute! I didn't tell my email address is BeatlesExaminer@gmail.com. Sorry. Go.
Okay. Alan, your turn.
Yeah, you can get in touch with me either on Facebook at Alan Kozin or Alan Kozin Remix, but I also read the mail that comes to Things We Said Today Radio Show at gmail.com. So, and also the comments on the YouTube versions of our show.
Yeah, we all read that stuff. We're all curious to know what you guys think of our show. So keep those comments and letters coming, folks. And as for me, Ken Michaels, my email address is everylittlething@att.net. My website is kenmichaelsradio.com. Don't forget, every week there's Beatles trivia on there, in which you can win one of 9 great prizes. And it ranges from CDs to DVDs to books every single week, starting Monday through Sunday. And every week there's a winner, and it could be you. That's at kenmichaelsradio.com. All right. So for Steve Marinucci, Alan Kozin, and myself, Ken Michaels, we just want to say thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.